recently jamming with a friend and I was saying, why don't you just improvise something around here? And he actually pulled out a load of paper charts with all sorts of scales on it and was like, but what about the major pentatonic? What about the blues scale and all this? And I just thought, man, this is just so complicated. So for anyone who's struggling with which scales to play when, then this video is for you. What I'm going to do is explain in the simplest way I can how all these different concepts of minor, major, pentatonic and blues all actually fit together quite simply. So I've got my guitar, I've got my beer, let's get into it. So in this video we're going to look at 6 tonalities: minor pentatonic, major pentatonic, minor blues, major blues, the natural minor and the full major scale. Now I know that sounds a lot, but we're going to keep it really simple by learning how we can do it all with one shape, the classic A minor pentatonic box. To help us understand how all these tonalities fit together, the video is going to be broken out into 3 key concepts. So firstly, we'll look at how minor and major are actually the same. Secondly, we'll look at how pentatonic and blues are virtually the same. And then thirdly, we'll look at how those sweet missing notes from the full major and minor scales are actually really easy to find. One thing I should just clarify before we move on is the difference between scales and tonalities. So for me, a scale is just a sequence of notes, the academic or theoretical way of looking at it. Whereas a tonality is about the colour, the flavour, the feeling that those notes evoke, i.e. the emotional way of looking at it. So whilst there are lots of good reasons to learn scales, in this video we're not going to be focusing on scale shapes, but rather on tonalities and how we can bring out those colours and flavours. So let's get into our first key concept, how minor and major are actually the same. And I want to start with a listening exercise. So in a moment I'm going to play along to the backing track, but let me just explain about the backing track first. So this is a really simple track I've put together. It starts with an A section which has the chords A minor, D minor, E minor, and then back to A minor. So this is a 1-4-5-1 progression in the key of A minor. Then we move into a B section which has the chords C, F, G, and back to C. So again, a 1-4-5-1 progression, but this time in the key of C major. Now these are probably the most minor-y sounding and major-y sounding progressions you can get just using basic chords without any sharps or flats. So as I'm playing, a couple of things to listen for. Firstly, that it starts darker sounding in the minor key and then brightens as we move into the major key. But then notice how I'm playing 95% of the same notes throughout, just using that basic A minor pentatonic shape. So here we go with the backing track. So to understand how I was able to play the same notes over both a minor and major key, let's go right back to basics. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and back to A. These are the musical notes with no sharps or flats. And together like this, they create an A minor scale, which has a dark or sad sound. Now look at the notes below, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. These are exactly the same notes, just with a different start point. And together like this, they create a C major scale which has a bright or happy sound. So A minor and C major have exactly the same notes. Although they have the same notes, they do have a different home note. That is the note that the music's ultimately going to resolve back to. So in A minor, the home note is obviously A, whereas in C major, the home note is C. Now every minor scale has a relative major scale with exactly the same notes. For example, E minor and G major have exactly the same notes, and C sharp minor and E major have exactly the same notes. So now let's talk about the pentatonic, and what is the pentatonic scale? Well, here's our full A minor scale, and now below, let's look at the pentatonic by comparison. So we keep the A, we lose the B, we keep the C, we keep the D, we keep the E, and then we lose the F, and keep the G. So that's our 5 notes. 5 is in penta, the pentatonic scale, then of course we can add another A on top. The reason this is so useful is that the B and the F are actually the notes that add the most colour to the A minor scale. So by taking them out, while sometimes it can make it sound a little bit more bland, it also means we can play it over lots of different chords without clashing. So that's the theory. Now let's see how we play it on the guitar. Now I'm sure many people watching are already really familiar with that shape, but just in case you're not, it's 5 on the low E and then up to 8 on the low E, 5 on the A and then 7 on the A, 5 on the D, 7 on the D, 5 on the G, 7 on the G, 5 on the B string and then 8 on the B string, and then on the top E, 5 and then 8 again. So 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. Now, sometimes people can view this shape as a bit beginnery, and there's lots of talk about getting out of the pentatonic box and all that stuff. Well, let me tell you, this is one of the most useful shapes you can ever learn, and loads of really great music has been made using it. So whilst all these notes can be played elsewhere on the guitar neck, this is probably the most useful position to know. So when we play that pattern on the guitar, these are the exact notes we're playing. And back to this point about A minor and C major having exactly the same notes, well, the same is true with the pentatonic scale. So if we look, firstly we have an octave of the A minor pentatonic, and then of course a second octave, and we can also play that high C as well as part of the A minor pentatonic. Now if we look below, we also have an octave of the C major pentatonic here, and a second octave. So for this reason, we can use this exact same shape for playing over both A minor and C major. Now there's 2 notes in this pattern which I really want to draw your attention to that help us understand how we can use the same shape over both minor and major keys. And those 2 notes are the first note and the second note. So this first note here tells us which minor key we can use this pattern over. So in this case, 5th fret of the E string is an A, so obviously we can use it over the key of A minor. The second note then, 3 frets up, this note here tells us which major key we can use this pattern over. So in this case, 8th fret of the E string, that's a C, so exact same shape we can use over the key of C major. Now let's look at another couple of examples. Say you wanted to play in the key of F sharp minor. Well, for a minor key, we know it's the first note of the pattern, so where's F sharp as the first note? That's here at the 2nd fret, so same pattern over the key of F sharp minor. If, for example, you wanted to play in B flat major, well, for a major key, we need to think about the 2nd note of the pattern, so that's at the 6th fret here is a B flat, so with that as our 2nd note, over the key of B flat major. So now we understand the same shape can be used for both minor and major keys. Let's go back to the backing track, and I'm firstly going to play over the key of A minor, and then I'll come back and let you in on what I'm doing to really make it focus on that A minor sound. So what I was doing there in the key of A minor was resolving a lot of my lines back to the note of A. So there's 3 A's within this pattern. First here, 5th fret of the low E, then 7th fret of the D, and then again 5th fret of the high E. And my first phrase was something like landing on an A. And then I played something similar a couple more times, and then towards the end, land on an A, and then land back on this low A. So just by resolving my lines to the A, I bring out that minor tonality of this shape. Now what I'm going to do is play something very, very similar in the key of C major, and here's what that sounds like. So now that was virtually the same thing, but in the key of C major, and all I did differently to make it sound brighter was resolve my lines back to a C instead of an A. So with A minor, I played. For C, I simply played and stayed on that C note at the 5th fret of the G string. And then later on, instead of landing on the A, I played and landed on the C again, and then resolving back to the lower C there. So by simply changing which note I'm landing on, I make it sound much brighter and bring out the major tonality. So that's the pentatonic. Now let's move on to our second key concept, that pentatonic and blues are virtually the same. So here's our A minor pentatonic scale, and all we need to do to turn this into a blues scale is add one note. It's an E flat in the middle here. Now that E flat is our blue note, hence I've coloured it blue. So A minor pentatonic becomes A minor blues. Now we already know that A minor and C major have the same notes. So to create a C major blues scale, it's exactly the same. We simply add an E flat. So it's the same notes, just a different starting point. Now that E flat really derives from a C minor scale, and that minor over major feel is what gives the blues its characteristic sound. So by focusing on that E flat, you'll really bring out the blues in your playing. So now we understand the theory of the blues scale, let's see how it works on the guitar. So back to our A minor pentatonic shape. All we need to do is work out where we can put some E flat notes in and around that. So the first easy one to get to is here, 6th fret of the A string, which falls in between the notes we've already got on that string. So we already had 5 and 7, so let's add 6 in as well. And then I can start to play things like, and immediately you can hear that starts to sound a bit bluesy. The other E flat we can really easily add in is here, 8th fret on the G string. So that's just slightly outside of our shape, but we can easily slip over to it like this. And as well as playing it direct, I can also bend to it. And so often when people are playing pentatonics, they do a little bend like that to bring in that kind of blues feel, which is kind of why I say, you know, the pentatonic and the blues scale are really the same thing, and I don't really think of them as anything separate when I'm playing. So now let's go back to the backing track. I'll play over the key of A minor first, and just watch out for every time I hit that note there or do that little bend, and you'll hear those bluesy phrases coming in. So here we go with the backing track. So what I'm going to do now is play something very, very similar in the key of C major. So whereas on the A minor example there, I was playing something like land on an A, and then a little bluesy phrase, what I'll do for C major is land on the C, same bluesy phrase. And in the A minor example, I ended with something like, using that blue note, that E flat on the A string there. You know, for the C major, I'll end on, again, just touching on that note. So here's how that sounds. Okay, so you might be thinking, I can hear some blue notes in there, but it's not quite as bluesy sounding as I might like. Something like that. And that's because there's another technique when we're playing over a major key, is to use the minor scale, which relates to that same major key. So in this case, C major, we could actually play over that with a C minor scale. So in order to find the C minor scale, of course, Where's the C, the first note of the pattern that we covered earlier? So that's here at the 8th fret, and that exact same pentatonic pattern. We can also find the blue notes that go with that, and use that to play over a C major progression for a really bluesy sound. The only little tip I give is this note here is particularly clashy, so just give that a little bend up, and then that really starts sounding like the blues. So let's play that over the backing track and see how that sounds. So a very quick word on the theory of why playing a minor over a major key works for blues. So if we look at our C major blues scale here, we have one blue note, the E flat. Whereas if we look at the C minor blues scale, we have three blue notes, the E flat, the G flat, and a B flat. And in really simple terms, more blue notes equals more blues sound. However, because we're still rooted in the C as our home note, it still feels like it fits over that C major chord progression. So now let's move on to our third and final concept, that those sweet missing notes are really easy to find. So here's the A minor pentatonic scale we've been working with, and we're missing two notes from the full A minor scale. You'll remember we took them out earlier in the video, and those are a B here and an F here. Now I call these the sweet notes because they're what lends the sweet melodic sound to this scale. I've coloured them red. You can think of them as like sweet little strawberries. So with these notes added, our A minor pentatonic becomes the full A natural minor scale. We've already established multiple times that A minor and C major have exactly the same notes. So here is the C major scale with the F and the B added in. So that's the theory. Let's take it to the guitar. So now we know we need to find two extra notes, a B and an F, to complete those full A minor and C major scales. Let's see where they are on the neck of the guitar using our usual A minor pentatonic shape. So I'm going to start with the F because that's probably easiest to incorporate, and we can find that here at the 6th fret on the B string. So we've already got the 5th and the 8th on that string. So we can just add in the 6th like that. And then the B we'll find at the 7th fret on the high E. It's also at the 7th fret on the low E, but we've already got then the 5th and the 8th there, and so we can just incorporate the 7th as well. So bringing in those extra notes, I'm now going to play along with the backing track again, and then I'll come back and show you what I did to bring them in a more musical kind of way. So to look at what I was doing to incorporate those extra two notes there then, so I started with our usual kind of phrase, but then I went straight to this hammer on from the 5th fret on the B string up to the 6th, which just allows me to bring in that F note here on the 6th fret. And now I'm up to the 7th fret on that top E, bringing in that B note, and by bringing that in, we're bringing a much more melodic sense than the normal kind of... That's what people playing pentatonic normally sounds like, whereas this is a lot sweeter sounding. But then I went to a bluesy sounding lick to end, just to show that just because I'm in a very melodic kind of sense here, doesn't mean I can't add in the odd blue note to bring that tonality in as well. So what I'm going to do now is play the same thing in C major using our usual trick of resolving to the C instead of the A, but then when it comes to playing this F note on the 6th fret, instead of playing it directly, what I'm going to do is bend the 5th fret to get to it. Instead of, I'm going to And that's a way that you can bring in those extra notes without even actually touching on them. So here's how that sounds. So now we've covered our three concepts, what have we learned? Well, firstly, we learned that we can use the same pattern over both minor and major keys. For the pentatonic shape we looked at, the first note tells us which minor key we can use it over, and the second note, which major key we can use it over. Then we looked at how for blues, we simply add the blue notes here and here. And then we looked at how adding those sweet notes creates the full minor or major scale tonality. Now if we bring all this together, we end up with a shape that looks like this, that we can use anywhere on the guitar to create music. So that brings us to the end of the video. I do hope it was useful and you got something from it. If you've got any questions, then leave it in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm now going to close out with some improv over the backing track. So as I'm playing, look out for a lot of the concepts we've covered in the video, and until next time, cheers.